Corporate sponsorship for this webinar is provided by the Local Government Federal Credit Union, a member-owned, not-for-profit financial cooperative. The credit union provides affordable financial services to all local government employees, volunteers, and their families in North Carolina. Member benefits include lower loan rates, higher interest rates on deposits, and a nominal fee structure. Financial services include mortgage, vehicle, and personal loans, savings, checking, money market, IRA, and term certificate deposit accounts, online banking and telephone access to accounts, in addition to many other services and features. For more information, visit lgfcu.org or call 800-344-4846. Welcome to this traffic safety webinar sponsored by the North Carolina Governor's Highway Safety Program. This is one in a series of webinars addressing topics of interest for traffic safety professionals. The series is co-hosted by the Institute for Transportation Research and Education at NC State University and the University of North Carolina Highway Safety Research Center. Today's topic is Community Engagement and Outreach on a Budget, presented by Tracy Anderson with ITRI. As the Traffic Safety Communications Team Lead for ITRI, Tracy specializes in transportation safety research, health behavior change campaign development, qualitative research design, and social marketing strategies. She holds a master's degree in communication from NC State University. Tracy also serves on the North Carolina Traffic Safety Conference Planning Committee as co-chair for the program and marketing subcommittees. Tracy, welcome, and please share your screen now to begin your presentation.
Thank you, Eugene. And thank you all for being here. As Eugene said, my name is Tracy. I lead the Traffic Safety Marketing and Programs group at ITRI. And today I'm going to talk to you about creative community engagement on a budget. So my goal for this presentation is to go through some simple and practical tips for launching community outreach and engagement campaigns. So we'll cover building a message, cost-effective tools for engagement, and tips for engagement. We'll also go through some free resources that you can use for your own work. So I first want to start out by just kind of addressing the context of these efforts. So this topic represents one piece of the solution. I think no matter what field or what piece of transportation that you work in, we all have the same goal. We all want to eliminate or prevent crashes that result in death or serious injury. And outreach and engagement is a really important piece of this, but it's not enough on its own. To get to zero traffic deaths, we need to build a roadway system that protects people from predictable mistakes and errors. So again, one piece of the complicated system we must change. Outreach and community engagement work best when they're combined with other measures like engineering interventions to design a safer roadway. So with that foundation, let's dive in. One of the first things you want to think about is building your message. If you want people in the community to be engaged in your project or your campaign, you have to be able to talk about your project in terms of how it relates to them. How will it affect them, and why should they care? And to start with that, you want to find out what concerns people have in the community. What do they do about those concerns? How do they talk about those concerns? And this will involve a little bit of research. So when we're thinking of ideas for community engagement, we have to temporarily take off our transportation nerd hats, or maybe your public health hat or your law enforcement hat, whatever that might be. We want to talk in a way that's relatable and understandable to everyone. And I want to say this with context. I definitely include myself here. I'm a proud transportation nerd. There's nothing wrong with that. But when we do engagement, we really want to meet people where they are. We want to acknowledge the realities that they face and not assume that they have the same motivations or the same concerns that we have. So we want to talk to the community and talk about our campaigns, our projects in relatable ways. So I'm going to go through a couple of tools that may help you as you're doing this research to find out what people are concerned about, what they talk about when they're talking about these concerns. And so the key here is to find out what language the community uses when discussing these issues. And this will help you to choose a message that is a lot more likely to be successful. So the first one I'm going to go through is Google Trends. This tool shows you what people are Googling in your area. It's very easy to use. You can search by a specific term or a phrase, and then Google will show you related topics and searches. So for example, as you see on your screen, I searched for speeding in North Carolina searches specifically. And you can see that one of the top related topics is school zones. So I can tell from that information that a lot of people in North Carolina are concerned specifically about speeding in school zones. So this is kind of a neat tool to explore. I encourage you to kind of click through, try different terms, see if you can find any trends, hoping that you find something you maybe hadn't thought of before related to your topic. And if you want to dive even deeper into Google searches, there's also a free tool called Answer the Public that I recommend. Answer the Public, they take autocomplete data from search engines like Google, and they give you data and phrases and questions related to that keyword. So again, I'll use an example. I searched for the phrase or the word speeding on Answer the Public, and it gave me this really gorgeous graphic. I know it's very small. I'll zoom in a minute, but each of these branches that you see coming out from the center, they say things like why, where, how, who, when, can, what, which, etc. So I'll zoom in a bit here. Again, this is from the speeding search and the branch that says will. And as you can see, there are a lot of Google searches about speeding tickets raising insurance rates. So you'll see which will speeding tickets raise insurance, will speeding tickets affect insurance, etc. So if I'm building a message about speeding, I may want to consider talking about money loss or even topics as specific as higher insurance cost, because that's clearly a concern here. Our gut reaction may be to talk about threats to health involved with speeding, or even technical stuff like the 85th percentile, right? When we think about speeding, that's what comes to mind. But rather than impose our values and our concerns using our language, we can instead address existing concerns using the language that the audience already uses. So this free tool offers great insight into how people think about different topics and what they're searching. Nextdoor is another great tool for listening to your community. Nextdoor is a social media site for neighborhoods. Basically, the posts are for specific small communities. So I'm on the Nextdoor for my neighborhood and the surrounding zip code. And this is a great place, again, to listen in on what people are concerned about and how they discuss transportation in your area. So this post on the far left that you see complains about people speeding in a neighborhood. And the guy who posted it pleads with his neighbors to slow down. His post had 47 comments with people reporting their own experiences on speeding. And this post about helmets on the other side had almost 100 people in this neighborhood talking about bicycle safety. I also searched for the term traffic on Nextdoor and found lots of individual posts about intersections and specific locations. So all of these conversations are very authentic. And again, it's a great tool to capture people's concerns in the area. The biggest limitation to Nextdoor is that you can only join for your neighborhood or area. But often what I've found is that's where you can have the most influence, because again, you're not some outsider coming in. You can say, this is my community, and here's why I'm concerned about traffic safety. So I encourage you to search through your Nextdoor. I expect that you'll find these conversations already happening, and you might be able to use it in your next campaign or your next project. Another great site to be a fly on the wall is Reddit. So Reddit is a social news aggregation, web content rating, and discussion website. And Reddit has pages, which they call subreddits, for every state and then for most major cities. And these pages have discussions that can be searched by topic. So when I searched the Raleigh subreddit for traffic, I found lots of discussion threads, including this one that you see here about greenways and another one about sidewalks. Both had hundreds of comments and back and forth conversations from residents. So again, a great tool to see how people are talking about these topics. And you can use these posts for inspiration in your messaging, or you can even choose to be a part of the conversation on Reddit. And there's a neat story that happened recently because of Reddit that I wanted to share. A local resident from Raleigh posted a series of dash cam videos from his morning commute of a driver that was repeatedly using the shoulder on the highway to pass traffic. And hundreds of people responded to his posts. Again, a long feed sharing their own experiences and opinions about driving dangerously, speeding, things like that. And the community of people on Reddit responded to this guy's post over and over every time he put a new video, and this anger kind of grew and grew in the community. And the community urged him to turn in his recordings to the State Highway Patrol. And it ended up leading to the driver's arrest, which you may have heard of. And as you can see, the community was pretty excited about it. You can see the post there. They say mission accomplished, great job, everyone, etc. Kind of a neat story. And I share this to show that these conversations are already happening online. And if we're not getting much response to our campaigns, our online surveys, our community input meetings, etc., we can go to where people are already having these conversations and engage with them or learn and listen in. So people are clearly concerned about transportation topics. We just have to make it easier to gather those concerns where they already are. And in this case, we can also see how a cultural change, a organic movement almost, came about on its own. So this wasn't the result of some state-sponsored speeding campaign. It wasn't a commercial, it wasn't a Facebook post. The community decided on its own that this reckless driver's behavior was unacceptable. And everyone who saw those posts or was scrolling through Reddit or saw it on the news, they also received that message that speeding, aggressive driving is unacceptable. And the community of Raleigh is stepping up and saying, we don't want this to happen. And that's extremely powerful. So now that we have some idea of how people in the community are discussing these topics, the next thing we want to think about is how to frame your message. So when we're framing our messages, there are a few things to consider. The first question you want to ask is, who bears the burden of the engagement? So if you need input, is it accessible and convenient to the whole community? If I'm working 2 jobs and I rely on public transit, can I easily participate in your meetings? Or are they in the middle of the workday in a remote location that I can't get to by bus? Can I give input on my own schedule? What are you asking people to do and how much effort is involved? If it's a large lift, that's likely why we're not getting much response. So we have to make it very easy and accessible and convenient to participate. The second thing we should think about is the message. So your message should focus on how it will help the community, not on what you need from the community. So again, this is framing. So for example, if your message is fill out our survey or come to our meeting, I might read that message and say, that sounds like a lot of work. I'm exhausted and I don't have time for that. I don't want more work. But if you're appealing in your message to how your project will help make my life easier or less stressful, I'm much more likely to pay attention. People also love to talk about things that matter to them. So inviting them to express themselves rather than to do work for you is also more successful. And lastly, you want to ask yourself if your message represents the people and the language of the target audience. If my message includes cycling, am I only showing people that are wearing Lycra and riding a $2,000 bike, like a $2,000 bike? And does my language include everyone that's affected? So for instance, I recommend using the phrase people walking and rolling rather than saying bicyclists and pedestrians, because it includes micromobility, it includes people in wheelchairs, etc. It's also just less technical and easily understood. So we want our target audience to identify with the language that we're using at all times. And then we can just leave the technical terms for the quarterly reports. Now let's go through some tools that you can use no matter how small your budget may be. The first one I'll go through is targeted social media ads. Facebook, which is also Instagram now, allows for targeted ad buys with no minimum budget. So you can set your budget by day. For example, most of the campaigns I've done are $5 a day or less, and I have had some that are $10 a day. And then you can choose your goal and your target audience. So for example, for a goal, you can choose traffic, and that just means that you want to drive people to your website. Or you can choose engagement. So you want people to comment, share, or like on your post, etc. And then there's lots of options for choosing a target audience. As you can see listed here, you can select by location, you can select counties, zip codes, etc. You can select demographics. So if you want to reach just parents or just tourists, or by specific interests. So you can select people that are interested in biking or interested in transit. You can also select by behaviors. So those that are frequent commuters or frequently use a mobile device. It gets pretty specific. And then so even with a small budget, Facebook and Instagram ads can be very successful when you're talking about reach. Here's an example of an ad that my team is running for a Safe Routes to School grant in partnership with the Albemarle Rural Planning Organization. We built a website which focuses on parents teaching kids safety by modeling safe choices and safe behavior. And this ad links to that site. For our target audience, we chose just parents. I think we chose 18 to 65 years old parents in the ARPO counties as the target audience. And then our budget was $4 a day, which is pretty low. And even with that, we were still able to reach almost 15,000 parents in our target counties. 188 of those engaged with the post. So they either liked it or they commented, etc. 169 people visited the website in those target counties, and that accounted to about $1.22 per visit, which is a very good deal for engagement. And then we had 6 people share the ad. So shares, that's what I really consider to be the gold. That's when your audience starts retelling your message for you. And that's really great engagement because then they become the messengers and that reach is very authentic. Google Ads also allow for very targeted outreach. They have a monthly budget, which is also no minimum for that monthly budget. And then you can also set a maximum CPC or cost per click. So you can say, for instance, I don't want to pay more than $2 for each visit to my website. Again, you can set goals just like Facebook ads to send people to your site, or you can set a goal with a more specific action, like I want them to fill out a form on my website. The target audiences are also very similar to Facebook. You can set location, county, zip code, etc. Demographics, interests, and habits. And then we'll talk for a bit about the ads. What I think is the best part about Google Ads is that your content will show up for people based on their Google searches. So for example, if someone searches kids car seats and they live in North Carolina, right now they will see an NC Vision Zero ad, which points them to more information on the website. And this is very useful because you get people who are already seeking out information. So it's a very effective way to point them where you want them to go. So if you need input on a project or you need to get responses in your area, you can set up which search terms will show your ads. So for example, here I searched for sidewalks in Raleigh, and it would pop up this ad which invites me to give input on Raleigh streets. So you really don't have to be an advertising expert to use this tool. They make it very easy to use, and you can adjust your search terms, your budget, etc. very easily. I talked about Nextdoor before, but Nextdoor is also a great place to post if you're looking for input in a specific area. So this is a post from DOT that received almost 700 comments and 1,000 engagements. The post just asked for people to give feedback on the roads in their area. And clearly people were very excited to do that, as you can see by the reactions here. You have people that replied to this post with concerns about flood zones, potholes, road paint, etc. You can also use Nextdoor for recruiting. So if you have a survey that you want people to fill out, you can put it there. Okay, so we've covered online engagement quite a bit, but I don't want to forget about the before times. So before the pandemic, of course, and hopefully again soon, before too long, there will be engagement opportunities with people in person or at events. So hopefully we can start some of these soon, but I'm going to go through some tips for in-person engagement. So first, an important distinction to make is that between engagement and outreach. So outreach is great. You want to get your message out, you want to raise awareness, etc. But if your goal is engagement, your effort needs to include listening. This is so key for really understanding community needs. We can't assume, again, that we understand the issues, that we understand the realities that people face, especially if we don't live in that area. So it's really important that we're listening when we're talking about engagement. And one of my favorite in-person events that we've participated in is the North Carolina State Fair. So in the past, we had a NC Vision Zero booth, and our goal for this activity, for this booth, was to talk to visitors about traffic safety. Now, most people that are visiting the state fair are looking for free stuff. They're there to eat some cool fried foods. They're not necessarily coming to the fair to think about or talk about crashes. That's not something that people are drawn to or want to think about. So we had to get really creative and think about fun ways that we could talk about safety and have meaningful conversations about how to be safe. So we came up with this meme game idea. Our booth had these empty meme frames that you can see there, and visitors could come choose a picture in an envelope right in front of the frame and then post it with Velcro to the meme. So you can see a few examples here. This one says, when someone speeds past you and you both end up at the same red light. Maybe you recognize this little kid who's laughing, but we had a number of current memes that they could switch out the face. The one on the other side says, your face when you see someone using their phone while driving. So when someone comes through, they Velcro this cute kid on the meme, and I would ask them something casual like, does this happen to you a lot? Like, this happens to me all the time. And we would start talking about our experiences with people speeding and driving aggressively and how ridiculous that is, and how you always end up seeing them at the next red light anyway. And so without lecturing anyone, we've established this social norm that speeding isn't worth it. And I learned something new about how people deal with aggressive drivers. So oftentimes that would help me develop a new campaign or think about it in a different way. The one on the right was especially fun with kids. Again, they would choose a picture from below, either the cat or like a surprised baby face or something. They would fill this out, and kids that were standing with their parents would often turn to me and they would say, "Mommy does that," when we're talking about distracted driving. And so they would tattle on their parents for using a phone while driving, which was hilarious. But it also led to some really meaningful conversations with those parents. because we ended up talking about how kids are always watching and always absorbing the behaviors of their grown-ups, their parents, the adults around them. And I learned what leads to phone use. So the parents would talk to me about why they do it or certain situations, what they try to do to stop, etc. So in this case, this game was really the hook. People were drawn in because they recognized the memes, but it really opened up doors for opportunities to listen about what people think about these issues and really learn about what people think and what they do on the road. So it was a really fun event. Visitors to the booth also had the option to pose as a meme in a frame if they wanted to. So again, this adds almost another dimension to the engagement because we ask people to reflect on their own experiences and opinions and then make a face to reflect that. So again, always a deeper conversation than just telling something someone. So you can see that we had a lot of fun at this event. And my quick takeaways from this meme game, first, ask, don't tell. So if our booth had a big sign that read, "Don't use your phone while driving," or "Aggressive driving is dangerous," I can guarantee you that people would have walked right past us. But people like to talk about their experiences. They like games. They recognize these memes. So we invited them to be engaged. We poise ourselves to listen, and we both get so much more out of it. So whenever you can, find a way to start a conversation and put on your big ears instead of telling people what they should be doing. My second big takeaway from this is don't be afraid to use pop culture. Sure, you might feel cheesy. I certainly did, but it can grab attention and get people interested. If people can relate to the content, they recognize this from the internet, they're a lot more comfortable approaching. They know what memes are and they think it's fun. So don't be afraid to use inspiration from what you see on your social media feeds. Next month, we're holding one of our first in-person events outside in quite a long time. We're hosting a Safe Routes to School Day at Dowdy Park in Nags Head, and it's to support Bike and Walk to School Day. Again, this is in partnership with the Albemarle Rural Planning Organization. So our goal for this event is to support our Show, Explain, Practice campaign, which I'll go through in a minute. But we also wanted to come up with something really fun and engaging. So we centered all of this around a scavenger hunt activity for kids. So the goal of the Show, Explain, Practice, or as I'll refer to it, the SEP campaign, encourages grown-ups to have meaningful conversations with kids about how to be safe around traffic. So the explicit intention here is to make safety a conversation that happens often between grown-ups and children. But the implicit effect of this campaign is improving the safety of the adults that are involved as well. So by centering the conversation around children, we can avoid some of that psychological reactance from the grown-ups. They're not being told not to do something, don't text and drive, don't speed, you're a bad driver. Instead, these messages are focused on their children and keeping their kids safe. And so it's a little bit easier frame to deliver. So at Safe Routes to School Day, parents will receive a SEP brochure along with the scavenger hunt worksheet. The first step of this campaign is show. So here we emphasize that kids observe and imitate the grown-ups in their life. So we encourage adults to model really safe choices. And then with each of these concepts in the campaign, we give specific action items. We don't want to leave anything in a vague space where they're not sure how to implement it. We give very specific examples. So like it says here, if you want to show kids safe choices, try this. Keep both your hands on the wheel and off of your phone. Buckle up every trip. Slow down and drive with patience. For explain, we really emphasize the idea that kids need to know the why. Those of you with children are probably familiar with this. They're great at asking questions, but if you say no, the next thing might be why. Or if you say yes, the next thing might be why. So we really want adults to explain their decisions while they're traveling and really go into detail about why they do certain things. This really helps kids to establish these thinking patterns long before they're in driver's ed. So again, we give very specific examples of things that adults can say. So as it says here, try it. If I'm driving, I've got a kid in the car with me, I might say aloud, oh, look, there's a person waiting to cross the road. I'll stop and I'll wave so they know it's safe to cross. Or I might say, oh, the cars ahead of me are braking. I'm going to slow down too. Or it's raining. I better turn on my headlights so that other people can see me. Or if your phone rings while you're driving, sounds like someone is calling me, I'm going to go find a place to stop so I can call them back. So again, asking adults to think aloud the things that they might do instinctively so that the kids are understanding all the process behind these behaviors, these choices. And lastly, we really emphasize practicing safety together. So under the try it for this concept, we give specific examples. For example, before crossing a street, ask your child, what should we look for? What should we be listening for? And then practice looking, listening, and crossing. Or while you're driving, asking your child to point and indicate when they see someone walking. And that really, again, helps a kid to remember that anytime you're in a car, you should be looking for people. So this is just to kind of go through what the campaign is. The SEP campaign was is the backbone of this event. But like I said, we really wanted to deliver it in a fun activity for kids. So this is showing the very top of the scavenger hunt worksheet. It shows the route that they'll take. As you can see, these clues kind of go around the park and then they exit toward the beach. And each scavenger hunt item has a short riddle that the kids can solve. And then each clue, each point has a QR code that the adults can scan, and it takes them to the Safe Routes to School website where they receive more information about that clue, and then in some cases, safety information as well. An important thing to note, we deliberately did not include traffic safety for every single clue. We have one about sea turtles. We had another one about hopscotch. But I would say that only about half of the clues actually related directly to traffic safety or the SEP campaign. And again, this was to make sure that it wasn't too heavy-handed on safety. We wanted to make sure that it was also seen as just a fun day at the park. So for example, I'll go through some of the clues. This clue here is when they first exit the park to the neighborhood street. The clue says, look both ways and wait for cars, follow the white lines, and if needed, pause. Where is the best place to cross the road? And as you can see, the kid can write the answer, the adult can scan the code, and then they're taken to the website and the adults see how they can practice this SEP campaign. So it refers to the brochure that they receive, and then it provides specific instructions. So while you're at this location, let's practice looking both ways. Let's explain to our kids why we look both ways, how to safely cross, and then practice it together. So it's a fun activity, but it's also giving very specific instructions for both the adult and the kid. Here's another clue when they're walking through the neighborhood. I tell cars how fast to go. People are most safe when they drive slow. What am I? And the answer is the speed limit sign. So again, they're referred back to the website. They receive the safety information, including a graphic designed by our team. And then we just refer, again, it's really important for drivers to always follow the speed limit, especially when there are people walking or biking in or near the traffic. So we deliver that safety message as part of the scavenger hunt. And this clue is one of the last ones on the hunt. Participants have to cross one last street to get to the beach. Again, it's important to note we wanted this whole activity to be very low risk. So this road and the others had a speed limit of 25 miles per hour or lower. It's a typical beach town, so there's lots of people crossing, lots of pedestrians. But again, the clue says, next we cross to get to the sand, look both ways, hold a grown-up's hand. What do we do to safely cross the road? So hopefully, again, spurring this conversation between the kid and the grown-up, how do we safely cross the road? And then when they scan the QR code, they receive another safety message, which focuses on eye contact and directs them to practice the SEP method using eye contact and crossing the road at the specific location. At Safe Routes to School Day, we're also handing out free giveaways with safety messaging. The image you see here, we printed a car air freshener. You see the front and the back here. And the idea is that adults will be reminded of the SEP method while they're behind the wheel. So if they're driving, they'll see this little air freshener and they'll remember, okay, I need to model safe choices. So it's always best if we can remind them of our message, our campaign, when they're in proximity to that choice or that behavior. We'll also be handing out and posting these posters around the target region, around Dowdy Park and the surrounding businesses to reinforce the campaign. Now, our next tip is to include a strong visual. Here we're talking about earned media, which refers to publicity gained through promotional efforts. So in other words, this is efforts where you didn't pay to have someone represent you. So it includes things that go viral online or things that are spread organically. And a great way to get earned media is through news coverage. And one of the best ways to do that is to have a very strong visual for the cameras. So this here is a picture of our annual World Day Remembrance shoe memorial exhibit, which displays pairs of shoes that represent the number of people killed on North Carolina roads each year. So even though this memorial display is repeated every year, we always get great news coverage. And why is that? It's because the news agencies really like to feature a strong visual. They want something to film to include with your coverage. We can talk about statistics over and over till we're blue in the face, but numbers just don't affect people the same way that the strong visual of seeing these shoes really does. This display makes those numbers real. And it's a great conversation starter. When we're talking about traffic safety, this is a great way to get people engaged. So whatever you end up doing, just always, if you're trying to get news coverage, think of an interesting visual that can go along with it. And then when you invite your local news agencies, they can bring their cameras. I also like to note any time that I mention these shoes or this exhibit, these shoes were all donated by members of the community. So we really consider this an asset to the traffic safety community as a whole. And if you would like to host this display, just reach out and we can make that happen. My next tip is to focus on empowering solutions. So the old strategy with traffic safety outreach really focused on fear appeals. If you think back to your driver's ed class, you probably watched videos of really gory crashes, ominous videos. And that's what I mean when I'm referring to fear appeals. But research shows that fear appeals don't work. So if you want to be effective, I encourage you to focus on empowering solutions. So here's an example of a fear appeal ad. It says, dying to send a reply, don't text and drive. Kind of gruesome. And with fear appeals, the intention is that, again, we're exposing people to the scary things that might happen to them if they engage in a behavior, and we will somehow scare them straight. They'll remember this danger when they're behind the wheel and they'll decide to do the same thing, the safe thing. But unfortunately, that's not how people react. Instead, they tend to manage their fear instead of managing the threat to their health. So they may see this message and say, I don't want to think about this. This is really gruesome. And then they may try to avoid the message, or they may use past experience to discount the message. I've texted behind the wheel and I've never died, so this isn't valid to me, or it's exaggerated. Or they may neutralize the threat and they may say that won't ever happen to me. So this type of messaging, I encourage you to try something else. I will also send out resources. If you want to look at the research on fear appeals, we can send that out after this webinar. So instead of talking about the horrible, awful things that might happen, instead we should talk about the good thing that can happen if we choose to be safe. This again invites people to engage instead of avoid our message, and we build them up instead of threatening them. Here are some examples of empowering people and focusing on solutions and positivity. I will include a link to these images toward the end. So again, focusing, slowing down saves lives instead of saying, don't speed or you might die. Or saying you are the most important safety feature in your vehicle. You have the power to prevent a crash. Or here's another example from our Be a Peach program. The goal of this campaign is to encourage young people to speak up if a driver is unsafe. Each letter of the PEACH acronym reminds participants of something they can say or something they can do if a driver is unsafe. So this campaign has been highlighted on social media and presented at several driver's ed classes across the state. It goes along with a role-playing exercise where teens can act out specific situations and practice speaking up. So teens know that driving can be dangerous. They don't need to be told that over and over, but instead this campaign focuses on empowering them on what to do if someone is unsafe. Okay, so we've covered a lot of practical information. I hope that it's useful for you. The last thing I'm going to do is share some free resources that may help you as you're developing your next outreach or engagement campaign. The first link that you see here will take you to our Safe Routes to School site. It's hosted on the Vision Zero site. It includes dozens of social media images which focus on kids' road safety and parents or grown-ups. We also post information about in-person events once they're safe. Again, all of these are free to download. Once you visit the website, you can distribute them as much as you'd like. We also have lots of traffic safety images on the Vision Zero site for basically every traffic safety topic you can think of. Free to download, free to use, please share. Oh, going backwards. Here's your page for a screenshot. This includes the links for the images I showed in this presentation. It also includes the Vision Zero YouTube channel, which includes hundreds of traffic safety videos, as well as the recordings for all of our traffic safety conference webinars. And the last link is for another webinar recording. If you'd like to learn more about building messages and community outreach, that's available at that link. All right, so in summary, community engagement is available to any sized organization for basically any kind of budget. You just have to be a little bit creative with it. So I'm putting my contact information here and a website to reach our creative team at ITRI. We're happy to help with your projects and to share resources we've already developed. I appreciate your time and I hope to be in touch. Thank you, Eugene.
Tracy, thank you very much. What a great presentation. And just to let folks know, the Tracy, I assume it's okay, we can post your slides on the Traffic Safety Conference webinar website. So folks will be able to access those later following the presentation. The links that Tracy has in her slides, I'll also make sure we include those in the follow-up email as well. So we do have some time for some questions and comments from folks. I'm going to go ahead and bring up just a reminder that you can use Q&A to type in a question or comment for Tracy, or you can just raise your hand and we'll be glad to call on you, open your microphone, and you can speak your comment directly to Tracy. Tracy, we actually, while you were presenting, we did have a really nice comment in Q&A. Roger Smock, when you were talking about your state fair engagement, he said that was wildly successful and he was fortunate to observe it firsthand. Ask, don't tell is so important to gain immediate buy-in from our audience and show them that you value and respect what they have to say, and it creates reciprocation for them to then listen to your message.
Absolutely, Roger. Thank you so much. Your booth was also wildly successful, so thanks. I appreciate the comment.
Yes, thank you very much, Roger, for that. So while we're waiting for other folks to comment or raise their hand, Tracy, let me ask you a couple of follow-up questions. First of all, you talked about the scavenger hunt. Are you doing any other scavenger hunt activities? And if so, how, if someone wants to bring that activity to their community, how can they do that?
Yes, we're building 2 more scavenger hunts in the next few months. The first one will be specific to Chavis Park in Raleigh. It's going to be a part of a pop-up traffic garden with the city of Raleigh and Wake County Safe Routes to School. So if you're in the area, I encourage you to attend. And we're also developing a more general scavenger hunt that could be used in most downtown, uptown areas. Both of those will be available on the Safe Routes to School site, which we listed. We'll send that out again. Our team is also available to partner with your organization if you want a scavenger hunt for your community. We've done that before with mini grants, so just reach out to me and we can set that up.
Thanks, Tracy. Another question. Early in your presentation, you used the term grown-ups to refer to parents, guardians, or maybe adults. I'm curious, why did you use the term grown-ups?
Yeah, so like I mentioned in the presentation a little bit, we really want our audience to identify with our message. We want them to see themselves in what we're talking about. So I purposefully use the word grown up to be inclusive of all types of relationships between children and adults. Not all kids have parents. Some guardian relationships are with aunts or siblings or adoptive parents. So instead of using grown-ups, or I'm sorry, instead of using parents, I like to use grown-ups just to allow more people to feel like they're included in that message.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. One last question from me. You mentioned a term called psychological reactance. Can you explain a bit more about that?
Yes, so first I'll give credit where it's due. Jay Otto and his team at Montana State University Center for Health and Safety Culture. I attended their webinar recently about this. They've done a lot of research on psychological reactance, and everything I've learned was from them. Psychological reactance is when a person feels like their individual freedom or their ability to choose is threatened. So they react to the message, in some cases by doing the opposite of the message. So for example, if someone hears like click it or ticket, they may react negatively and feel like, oh, this is my freedom. I should be able to choose whether or not I wear my seatbelt. And so they might buckle up, or they might not buckle up as a form of protest. So again, I can send links to that research and that the Center for Health and Safety Culture in the follow-up. It's really fascinating stuff, and it's directly relevant to basically all of our traffic safety messaging.
Okay, Tracy, thanks very much for that explanation. Well, I don't see any hands raised. There are no more questions in the queue. So I want to go ahead, we'll just move into our wrap up. If you do have any additional questions while I'm comments while to type in while I'm wrapping up, I'll get to those. But I want to thank Tracy again for your presentation. A great job. I want to thank everyone who joined us today. If you do have questions following this presentation, as I mentioned, we'll send some follow-up email. And there'll be a link in there. Well, Tracy's contact information will be in there, so she can help address some stuff offline. Before you leave, feel free to also use the Q&A window to type in any suggestions you'd like to have to help us improve the webinar series, including future topics you'd like to learn about. So as I mentioned, you'll get an email following this presentation with more information and the recording link in case you tuned in late and missed any part from the earlier part of the presentation. You'll be able to watch that. The email is also going to include a link if you'd like to request a participation certificate. We're happy to provide that to you. If you wish to receive one, just be sure to use that link in the email to request it. If you're a PE, you can earn a PDH for participating in the webinar. There'll also be a link in that email to complete your NC Bells evaluation. So be sure to do that if you're a PE. Do note that if you happen to be watching the recording right now instead of the live webinar, we are only able to award certificates for people who participate in the live presentation. We invite you to join us again for other traffic safety webinars that are planned for our series. Please visit our website at the link on your screen for a listing of upcoming webinars. At that same link, you'll find all the past recordings for the webinars in the series, and that's also where we'll be posting the copy of Tracy's presentation slides. Once we post the recording to the website, that's where you'll be able to download those. On the same website, you'll find information about the next North Carolina Traffic Safety Conference and Expo. We do hope you'll plan to attend the conference next year, and we invite you to propose topics for presentation. At the website, you'll find a link for presentation proposals to submit your ideas. So with that, I want to thank everyone again for participating in today's webinar, and until next time, goodbye for now. Corporate sponsorship for this webinar is provided by the Local Government Federal Credit Union, a member-owned, not-for-profit financial cooperative. The credit union provides affordable financial services to all local government employees, volunteers, and their families in North Carolina. Member benefits include lower loan rates, higher interest rates on deposits, and a nominal fee structure. Financial services include mortgage, vehicle, and personal loans, savings, checking, money market, IRA, and term certificate deposit accounts, online banking and telephone access to accounts, in addition to many other services and features. For more information, visit lgfcu.org or call 800-344-4846.